A setback in the Israel-Hamas ceasefire deal. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office saying his cabinet will not convene to approve the agreement due to what has been now described as a last-minute crisis caused by Hamas. A spokesperson for Hamas saying they are committed to the ceasefire agreement announced by mediators. And joining us right now on the set is Senor. He's a former foreign policy advisor for the Bush administration, host of the podcast Call Me Back, friend of the show, and someone who's been on the broadcast on some of these very pivotal moments. So where are we really?
I think the deal is going to go through. I think,
despite whatever is being said right now.
Yes. So I think the deal will go through, and I think as soon as Sunday we will start seeing Israeli hostages returning to Israel. The first would be three Israeli women. There are last-minute hiccups in the deal, as is often the case with these kinds of negotiations. It certainly was the case in November of 23 when there was that big deal done. There were last-minute hiccups. The disputes seem to be, the first phase of the deal is a 42-day ceasefire. And during that 42-day ceasefire, 33 Israeli hostages over the course of the 42 days are to be released. And then Israel can commence negotiations for the second phase, or the war could resume. One of the factions in Netanyahu's government is arguing there is no phase two. At the end of phase one, we go back to war. And obviously Israel has the option to do that, but it sounds like this one, his name is Smotrich, he's the finance minister, he's saying, no, we want to know that you're going to do that. That's the first thing. And the second holdup is Israel is going to be releasing hundreds, about 1,200 Palestinian prisoners from Israeli prisons as part of this deal. It's sort of a crazy part of the scenario that for every Israeli hostage, you've got tens of Palestinian prisoners that are being released. And Israel, according to the deal, has some kind. So Hamas presents a list of the prisoners they want out, and Israel has some kind of veto over. They get to pull a name out and replace it with another one because some names are so unacceptable. Keep in mind, in a previous hostage deal in 2011, Yehia Sinwar, the architect of October 7th, was one of the people released. So if Israel knows it has a Sinwar type that Hamas is asking to be released, they get to say no, and Hamas is saying no, we don't. You can't exercise your veto. So this is also a hold up. I think it'll get sorted.
Is this a good deal?
No, it's not. It doesn't mean Israel shouldn't do it, but it's not a good deal. I mean, when you think about the fact that here we are, we just passed the second Thanksgiving. I mean, you think about that, of these Israeli prisoners sitting there in the dungeons of Gaza. And after all that and all the military success Israel has achieved, the idea that it still has to negotiate to get some women out, some children out, some dead bodies out, in return for tens of Palestinian prisoners. It's just, from afar, you sit there thinking, isn't this just going to encourage terrorism in the future? Isn't this going to just send the message that, look at the high price Israel will pay to get their people back? Israel's enemies will say, we could just keep doing this more and more and more. That said, I'm supportive of the deal. And the reason I am, Andrew, is because Israel right now, and I've been skeptical of a lot of negotiations in the past, and I didn't think they were going to go anywhere. And I understood why there was some resistance within Israel. The reason I am supportive of this deal is because Israel militarily and geopolitically is in the best position it has been. Honestly, you go all the way back to the Six-Day War in 1967. If you look at what Israel has done to Hamas, to Hezbollah, to Iran, the regime in Syria has fallen. Israel's now on offense against the Houthis. I mean, Israel is on the march in the region. So Israel's going to have to take some risk in doing this deal and taking the pressure off Hamas. If you're ever going to take a risk, do it now to get some of your people out, when Israel has been operating from this position of strength.
Could Israel actually be the ones to say no to this deal, though? I mean, I was hearing that there were two factions within Netanyahu's government that are threatening to pull out of the government if he goes ahead with this.
So one of the factions, led by Ben Gvir, he's against it, and he is threatening to pull out of the government. But Netanyahu's coalition in recent months has expanded. So it's 120 seats in the parliament, in the Knesset. He had a 64-seat government. So if one of those parties pulled out, it would always sink the government. But since then, his government has expanded. He brought another party in, so he has 68 seats. So that gives him a little leverage. One party pulls out, his government survives. Both of those factions, both of those parties pull out, the government falls.
Final question. The politics of here, meaning we have a new president coming on board literally next week.
Yeah.
How much credit, blame, whatever, are you going to give to Biden? How much credit, blame are you going to give to Trump? And given that you think this is a bad deal, but maybe something
a deal they should do
that's worthy, how should we think about it?
Two things. I just want to say very quickly, don't underestimate hundreds and hundreds of Israelis have been killed in this war, IDF casualties, since October 7th. Since October 7th. Israel keeps it's fighting a seven-front war. It has to keep sending its young men and women to fight these fronts that they're on, and letting families know that, yes, it's universal conscription. Yes, your loved ones are on the front lines, but we will do everything possible to get them back if they're taken hostage is a very important message to Israelis. Look, I think Biden, and I've given him credit from time to time for what he's done for Israel post-October 7th, but I think he stymied many of the negotiations because of the pressure he would publicly put on Israel, which sent a message to Hamas leadership that, the pressure's mounting on Israel. Why do we need to negotiate? Right. And I think Trump coming in and sending a message, A, that he was unapologetically sympathetic to Israel, and B, more importantly, quote unquote, all hell will break loose. Now, he never specified what all hell will break, right. But it just, the sense that someone was coming in that was going to shake things up, and you do not want to catch his wrath.
Yes, Israel's back.
Yeah, but and he truly loathes Israel's enemies, right. And he was ready to do so. And the fact that he left it vague, I think, I just spoke to a number of people in the Middle East. Everyone felt on edge about Trump coming in, like, it's sort of like his one Israeli friend. His friend said to me, he's like the night at the bar, like he's just showing up, he's doing something crazy, and we don't know what that is, and we don't want to test it. I've heard this from hostage families who work closely with the Biden team.
Less light between Israel and the United States. But it's
also and also the willingness, the unpredictability. That's the point. It's that the unpredictability that we don't know what he'll do. And the fact that he set this deadline, all hell break loose by January 20th, put everyone on edge. And I've heard this from Biden, some of the Biden folks, too. They said there was like a whole good cop, bad cop thing going on. Where
Biden to pull the rug out from under Israel, which you never knew when that was going to happen.
Right. And the distance when the U.S. would do that encouraged Hamas to not negotiate and to just dig in. So, look, you've heard it from Biden himself. You heard it from the Biden people. Trump playing this kind of bad cop role was extremely important. And I will say, we talk about how dysfunctional and polarized our politics are. These last few months, and I've seen it pretty closely, these two teams, who would have thought the Biden team and the Trump teams working together like this is impressive.